For months, Republicans have been yammering about winning back the Senate. Well, Democrats have news for them. Not so fast. In race after race, they're pushing back hard against the GOP. Like in Iowa, for example, Republican Joni Ernst became famous with this ad.
I'm Joni Ernst. I grew up castrating hogs on an Iowa farm. So when I get to Washington, I'll know how to cut pork. Washington's full of big spenders. Let's make them squeal.
She's squealing, all right, because her Democratic opponent just went live with this ad.
We've all heard the one about pigs squealing, but when Joni Ernst had the chance to do something in Iowa, we didn't hear a peep. She backed measures to actually increase spending.
And that's not all. In Michigan, the Republican candidate there has been touting her humble beginnings, her humble upbringing in a trailer park. But her Democratic opponent is offering up the full story.
She grew up in a trailer park and motel owned by her grandparents. Terry Lynn Land worked her way up.
But that's not the whole story. Years later, Terry Lynn Land bought that property and evicted the 170 families living there. 170 families told to get out.
In race after race, Democrats are exposing the other side's real record. The GOP thought it could moonwalk into the Senate this year. Too bad voters might be telling them to take a hike come November. Joining me now is Benji Sarlin, political reporter for MSNBC. His article today is titled, Democratic Party Draws Blood Early in Key Senate Races. And Democratic strategist Angela Rye. Thank you both for coming on the show tonight.
Thanks, Fred.
Thanks for having me.
Benji, Republicans have been measuring the drapes in the Senate, but it's not going as planned, is it?
Well, they definitely have a superior map to Democrats. There's a lot of Democrats playing defense, and they like to talk about how all these fundamentals are so great for them. Obama's approval rating is so low in a lot of these states. But at the end of the day, it is a collection of individual races. And a lot of these races, Democratic candidates have been working very hard and spending a lot of money very early to make sure that the other candidate looks as bad as possible, as early as possible. They don't want them to get any footing at all. And what we've seen in some of the early polling is that it's catching them a little off guard. In Michigan, for example, Terry Lynn Land was leading a lot of polls a couple of months ago. Then after this barrage of negative attacks from Gary Peters, she's behind in every poll they've taken recently. And not only that, some of the polls find that she's becoming personally unpopular. So her story about humble beginnings that you alluded to there no longer seems to be resonating the way it was before. And we've seen this in a number of other races. So while the fundamentals in many ways still favor Republicans, they still have to actually close the deal. And in some of these dirty street fight races, they might just not have the toughness to get through them.
You know, Angela, in Arkansas, for example, Democrat Mark Pryor has been hitting all his opponents' support for far-right economic issues. Listen to this.
I've been married to the same wonderful man for 37 years, and we have 2 great kids. Retirement is just around the corner for us. That's why I was so concerned when I read Congressman Cotton voted to change Medicare into a voucher system.
Now, added to that is the fact that the Democrats in that state are trying to get an initiative raising the minimum wage on the ballot. Now, how important will this focus on economic issues be in getting Democrats out to vote, Angela?
I think it's immensely important, in part because it demonstrates the hypocritical nature of the candidates that the GOP continues to put on the ballot all over this country, with the message that they're sending loud and clear is that we can talk that talk, but we're not about that life. And that life in this instance is about fair wages, ensuring that women are paid on par with their male counterparts, and ensuring that people, regardless of their racial background and in part regardless of their experience, have access to job opportunities. And that is not the message that the GOP sends either on the Hill, nor is it what they send as was stated earlier in these individual races. That is not the record that they demonstrate, and it's certainly not the message either.
You know, Benji, I noted in your article today that the Democratic strategy, and let me quote directly from the article, it says, to the extent that there's been a unifying theme in the Democratic offense, it's been the ongoing effort to portray Republican hopefuls as irreconcilably captured by their party's right flank. The rise of the Tea Party has pushed Republican candidates into near uniform positions on most partisan issues.
Elaborate. You're absolutely right. And Arkansas, which you just mentioned, is an excellent example. Now, Tom Cotton's someone who came into the House during that kind of Tea Party wave around 2010. And as such, as someone who was a rising Republican star, he's pretty much voted with the conservative side all the way through. So now when it comes to an election like the Senate election, the general election, he doesn't have a lot to show his independence. He's pretty much sided with the right on everything. And Democrats are really using that to their advantage against him, not just on issues like the Ryan budget, but on issues that affect the state. For example, the Farm Bill, which is very important in agriculture-heavy Arkansas. He sided with the Tea Party in opposing it because it was too generous with food stamps. They're hitting him very hard over that.
Now, Angela, you know, there's a big reason why control of the Senate is so important. Senator Ted Cruz crystallized that even himself when he said, quote, to successfully impeach a president, you need the votes in the U.S. Senate. This is a clear statement and one that could also energize a Democratic vote.
It absolutely could, and it should, because their intentions have been clear from the midterms coming into these midterms to the 2012. They've been talking about impeaching this president since the first term. We know that Mitch McConnell said that he had every intention to ensure that this president would be a one-term president. Well, while their wishes did not come true, and perhaps their nightmares did, Democrats have to ensure that they're not only going to the polls, but they're going to the polls in numbers. This is a different day and age, Rev. We are post-McCutcheon from the Supreme Court and post-Citizens United. It's not just the votes that count, it's the dollars as well. And that is why you're seeing Democrats in all of these different states hit so hard so early with these advertisements.
Benjy Sarlin and Angela Wright, thank you both for your time tonight.